Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Wayne. And thank you, everybody, 30 of you, it looks like right now, that are taking your time on a Wednesday evening in the middle of winter during a pandemic to learn about mental health and learn about ways to improve mood. I was saying to Wayne before the beginning of the call, I so honor the opportunity to do this. I so honor that you have leadership that explores mental health and emotional health. And this is literally considered the most depressing time of the year, aside from a pandemic. So what an opportunity to look at ways that we can feel better, boost our mood. And I want to give a little bit of a caveat just at the beginning. So I am a therapist, and I just want to be really clear that this session is not therapy. Sometimes people have traumas and other things they're going through where it can be helpful to talk to someone one-on-one. But in saying that, every single strategy I'm going to present tonight could be helpful no matter where you are at in the spectrum of mental well-being. You know, if you're someone who's just up and down, having good days and bad, hopefully this will be helpful. If you're someone who really struggles, or if you know someone who really struggles, again, I'm hopeful these strategies will be helpful. And I'm going to go back and forth, sharing my screen and not, to try and make it a little bit dynamic. So bear with me if it's a little bit jolted here and there. I'm a social worker, not an IT specialist, but I try. So it is about improving mood. I am Ann-Marie. I love what I do. I love workshops like this because you can only work with so many people one-on-one, but once you train people, they can be their own support in many ways and use these skills in their life. And that is my hope for you today. So please make yourself comfortable. Hopefully you have a tea or a coffee or something nearby. I know I'm not too far from a tea. And I'm going to encourage you while you listen today to maybe be prepared to pick 2, maybe even 3 strategies, because information is good, but if it only stays information, we won't see any benefit. But if we can practically pick a couple things to introduce into our daily routine and our lifestyle, we actually will see an improvement of our mood. So just be listening, be thinking. Not every strategy works for everyone, but hopefully out of everything I'm going to share today, you'll find at least a couple that might be a good fit for you. So before I get too far into the presentation on what improves mood, I need to talk about the alarm of stress that we all have. I've talked about this in previous workshops, and I want to talk about it today, just in case you haven't been in a previous workshop. But if you want to learn more, there are other videos you can watch where I've spoken, and I've gone into a lot of depth about our internal alarm mechanism. So we all have a sympathetic nervous system, and that is our internal alarm bell that is activated when we're under stress. When we are stressed, our heart works harder, our lungs work harder, our digestive system kind of goes offline. You know, blood gets focused away from our internal organs towards our extremities so that we could run if we need to. It's called the fight or flight response, which maybe you've heard of. And it's there because if I was in the woods and I was being chased by a predator, I would need that fight or flight response, that alarm, to kick into gear so that I'm strengthened and I could run and escape, or I could fight back. So that's why it's called the fight or the flight, so that I could have one of those 2 options to survive a trauma. And that happens when big things happen, like the capital T trauma, like someone chasing me in the woods, or a car accident, or maybe a history of trauma and abuse. But it also happens with little t trauma, living with lots of stress regularly in your life. This pandemic has been a little t trauma for the entire world. And all of us, you know, maybe you might not recognize this, but I really believe that every human being in the world right now, as long as they're aware of what's going on, has had their alarm system activated. Whether it's a little bit or a lot, depending on your life situation, all of us have been a little bit activated with the news and vaccination situations and lockdowns and people we love getting sick, or being afraid that we're going to make another loved person sick, or you know, school, kids are in school, kids are out of school. And hopefully I'm not triggering anyone by talking about these things, but it activates us. Our alarm bells have been off. And because of that, we're living in this stressed state. And so the last time I spoke, I talked about ways to calm our nervous system. And I encourage you to watch that if you haven't, if you want to learn how to regulate your nervous system. Today, we're talking about how to improve mood, but that still takes care of our nervous system. It still can calm us down. It can still relieve stress. And before I go into all the strategies, I want to explain just a wee bit more about our stress states, because we actually all have different ones. So it can be helpful to know what is your response to stress, to know what strategies might be helpful for you. And that's partly why different strategies work well for different people. So I called it the fight or flight response, but it's actually the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. There are 4 trauma responses, 4 stress responses. Someone who responds in the fight mode maybe is someone who gets very agitated when they're stressed. Maybe you notice you're more easily on edge, you're a little more angry than normal. Maybe you're someone who can sometimes become a little bit aggressive or overly assertive in life when you're feeling under a lot of stress. Some people identify with that. Maybe that's a fight response that you lean into. Some people identify with the flight response. When they feel stressed, they feel anxious. They feel like they need to escape. They want to run away. They want to isolate. That might be someone who is in the flight response. And we all have one of them. We all have at least one of them. And sometimes we can waffle between them. But people who generally struggle with anxiety or feel more anxious or worry a lot, they might be in the flight response of stress. The freeze response is less understood, less talked about, but that's when someone is so stressed and they can't really fight back, they can't really run away, so they shut down. We see this a lot in people who had childhood trauma because they were too small to fight back, they were too small to run away. We also see it with people who have ambiguous stress, where there's not really an enemy to fight and there's nothing to run away from. Workplace stress can cause this sometimes. And people who have a lot of stress, they max out their stress system. The fight or flight switches off and the freeze kicks into gear. And so this looks like things like dissociation, shutting down. You know, if you're someone when you're stressed that you stare at a wall and you lose track of time, you are probably living in a freeze response. People who live in freeze, or functional freeze, we call it, maybe are more tired. They avoid conflict. They feel lethargic or like they're in a fog, because literally their nervous system is shutting down. It's slowing down. It's like an animal who plays dead in the wild. They couldn't run away. They couldn't fight back. So they play dead. They lay down. They get small. And sometimes when we're stressed, some of us enter the freeze response. The last one is fawn. And fawn response is a bit similar to freeze, a bit similar to flight, but how it shows up is people pleasing. So when people are under stress, they try to cling in relationships. They try to do good for other people. They try to reach out to people and cling and get love and affection back and never want to do something wrong. They're always the peacemaker of their family. That's a fawn response to stress. So I'm not going to go too deep here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I plant the seed to see if maybe there's one of those that resonate with you, because it might help you understand which one you need in terms of the coping mechanisms and the mood boosters. So for example, if you are someone who identified with the freeze response, the mood boosters that are going to work best for you are the ones that include creativity or activity, because it's about movement. It's about thinking. It's about getting out of a stuck mode that can help you heal. For somebody who is more the fight or flight, your activities that are going to be good for you are ones that bring calm, because your nervous system is really on fire. It's overactivated. And so any strategies that talk about being calm or rest, those might be a good fit for you. Somebody with fawn, probably any strategy could be helpful. But when I talk about things like boundaries and saying no, those might be the ones that you need to lean into. So I hope that little bit, that Cole's Notes version of context is helpful as I go into the responses, because truly I could probably do an entire workshop just on fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But hopefully that's enough for now so that the strategies make sense. So let's get into some strategies and some tools. And we're going to look at how you can hack your hormones as the first part of the workshop, because a lot of our mood is actually contingent on our hormones. And if we have what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like insufficient deficiencies in this area. I think that's the word I want, deficiencies. If we have deficiencies with dopamine, for example, we're going to see an impact on our mood. If we have a deficiency with serotonin, we're not going to sleep well. We're going to have problems with regulating in life. So looking at our hormones and finding ways to hack or improve them can help. So the first hormone that you might have heard of before is dopamine. And dopamine is our feel good or our reward hormone. It makes us feel satisfied. It makes us feel like we had a sense of accomplishment. Dopamine actually is activated often when people use substances, when they use drugs, because it's activating the same reward center of the brain. And that's why drugs are so enticing for some people, because they feel good. It takes away pain, it makes them feel good, and they feel that sense of reward. But there are healthy ways to hack dopamine. We can complete a task that can make us access dopamine. Making your bed in the morning, checking something off your to-do list. I don't know about you, but I love a to-do list, and I love when I can like check it off. And I'll even sometimes, if I've done something, I'll write it down just so I can check it off, because it actually releases dopamine. Exercising can release dopamine. Trying a new recipe, again, it's about accomplishment. It's about achieving something. It sends a message to our brain that we did something good, and we feel good about that. Listening to music, songs that you enjoy, can also cause dopamine to be better. Now, people with depression, people with different mental health issues often have low dopamine. So finding healthy ways, natural ways to increase it can improve mood. And all of us really, in this pandemic, again, our dopamine might be depleted. Another hormone that we can hack is serotonin. This one is more about mood regulation. So where dopamine is about reward and pleasure and feeling good, serotonin is about helping us stay even keel. It regulates our sleep cycle, it regulates our mood, it helps our hunger be appropriate, and it can help our memory be accurate and healthy. And some ways to hack serotonin are to meditate. Some people really like meditating because it increases their serotonin. Being in nature, just being in the environment, taking in the sunshine and the trees. Sunshine helps regulate our serotonin. Light therapy. You've ever heard of SAD lamps, which is seasonal affective disorder lamps? People get very depressed with lack of sunshine because their serotonin is low. And so SAD lamps can be really helpful to mimic the serotonin we get from the sun. Massage can also increase our serotonin, so going to see a massage therapist. So you can tell anyone, go to your doctor and say, write me a prescription for massage, please, because Ann-Marie, a psychotherapist, said that it's going to help increase my serotonin. You can go ahead and do that. Name drop if you need to. Remembering happy events and thinking about nostalgic things can also increase our serotonin. Another hormone is oxytocin, and this is the cuddle hormone, or you might have heard of it called the love hormone. And oxytocin is a really beautiful hormone. It's released when women give birth. It's released when we look into the eyes of a child. It's released when we hug each other. And it's our bonding hormone. Oxytocin is partly when a mother gives birth to a baby, why they're able to connect and attach so quickly to this little stranger. Oxytocin is part of that. And I believe it's God-given and it's wired in all of us. And that's partly why we heal in community, because we get oxytocin from being around people that we love. And with a time of isolation, with the pandemic, that might be good for our physical health, not necessarily good for our emotional health, unfortunately. So finding ways that we can increase our oxytocin could possibly help. One thing you can do, and I'm just going to stop the share just for a moment if I can. One thing you can do, and this is actually a grounding technique, you can actually give yourself a hug. And it seems simple. A lot of these strategies might seem very simple, but it's in the simple that we find the profound sometimes. Sometimes we overthink our feelings instead of actually just being with our bodies and expressing and emoting, which is very healthy and helpful. So one way you can give yourself a hug is actually to take your right hand and put it under your left armpit near your heart. And feel free to do this along with me, because then you'll see what it's like. You don't have to, but you're welcome to. And then take your other hand and put it on your right bicep and just hold yourself tightly. You are literally releasing oxytocin as you do this. It's a grounding technique because you're becoming aware of your container, your body. When we're anxious or stressed, we get too in our head, or we can start to detach from ourselves, and grounding by just being aware of our body can bring us back to the present. And I don't know about you, but when I do this, I sigh. You might have heard me do that a second ago. I just naturally do that because I'm grounding myself and I am stimulating my vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It is the muscle behind our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our peace response. Earlier, I was talking about the sympathetic, the fight or flight, but the parasympathetic is what brings us peace. It's our parachute, if that helps you remember it. And by hugging ourselves, we're actually stimulating that response. See, I can't help it. It actually just makes me sigh. So you can do this for yourself and just hold it for a little bit. Even if you do nothing else, you're releasing oxytocin. If you add deep breathing to this, that's like a double whammy of self-care. You're really bringing on the peace response. Another thing I tell people to maybe do is put on music. You know, you could sit and listen to music in this stance. If you pray or if you meditate on scripture, you can absolutely do that. You could just meditate on God's love while you do this. It's really beautiful. You can kind of do anything with it that you want. It's so simple, but I cannot tell you the number of people that have found this helpful who struggle with stress and anxiety. So a very simple oxytocin releasing mechanism. If you have a partner or a loved one in your home, you can hug each other, because that also will release oxytocin. Oh, I see some people hugging right now. That's really cute. Because that releases oxytocin, and it also allows us to co-regulate our nervous systems. So for any of you out there who ever had a baby, you know that if you're stressed, your baby picks up on it, even if they're too young to talk. You know, maybe they're fussy and it's because they're picking up on the stress of their caregiver. That's because a baby's nervous system will respond to a caregiver's nervous system. Like we literally unconsciously can feel how each other are doing. And when you hug someone you love, you can co-regulate your nervous systems, and it can be very therapeutic. So if one person's anxious, but the other person's at peace, the other person will benefit from your peaceful state. So you can oxytocin it up, and you can bond, and you can co-regulate. So if you can't tell, I'm a big fan of hugging. It's a great skill. Sorry, I want to share my screen again. Okay. So let's continue with the hormones, and then I'm going to get into some other strategies. Oh, and looking at the eyes of a baby, honestly, like if you have a baby in your family, just looking into their eyes can boost your mood. It literally releases oxytocin, and it does it for the baby too. So it can be very helpful for bonding, for attachment, and helping that child develop emotionally well. Endorphins is another hormone we can hack. And endorphins are about pain relief and happiness. They're an opioid neurohormone, and an opioid is a pain reliever. We get opiates prescribed to us sometimes if we need a pain medication. We have natural opiates in our system, opioids, and endorphins are an example of that. When you feel stress, endorphins are released by your body to relieve pain. So it's good to have lots of endorphins there ready to go. They're also released during exercise, eating, and when having sex. So some ideas, ways to hack endorphins are walk, hike or jog, exercise, weight training. You could make your favorite meal. That also releases endorphins. It's something you can anticipate as being something you will enjoy. Watching a comedy releases endorphins. Intimacy with your spouse, because having sex is a way to release endorphins. We're God wired that way. Eating dark chocolate or spicy food also can release endorphins. So maybe there's an idea in here of something you can hack to improve your mood. Now I want to talk about some other additional mood boosters. And I will say that you might find there's a bit of overlap with some of the things we talked about, because those hormones are the reason why a lot of these strategies I'm about to get into work. So if you hear any repetition, it's for that reason. These strategies are about hacking hormones as well. And there's other reasons why they work. Maybe they're also about nervous system regulation. Maybe they're also about self-care or self-love, self-compassion. Lots of different reasons why these will work. So I want to give you a tool that I give to everybody that I work with. And if you want, you could do it along with me, just like we did with the hugging exercise. So this is called a somatic exercise. And it's part of what's called somatic experiencing. So a lot of therapy is head down. You know, we talk about how we feel, we talk about what we're thinking, we talk about childhood trauma or stress in our life. But if we stay there, a lot of people actually get stuck. I've seen people who've done therapy for decades and are still no better. And the reason why is because of a lot of our mental health has nothing to do with our brain, and it has everything to do with our body holding on to trauma and stress. So think of maybe an example is if you've ever been in a fender bender at a car accident, and you kind of were like really tense and holding it like this, your steering wheel, and maybe for a while after you still kind of felt like that. Some people go through life like this, and they're holding on to things. They're holding on to grief or anxiety or trauma or depression, and their brain can't release that. Their body actually needs to connect with that emotion. This exercise helps us do that. So I'm just going to do it quickly and just briefly, and I want to be safe. So if you practice this with me, and if you feel triggered at all, go to the hug, because that's your container. It's a grounding technique that is really useful when people feel triggered. So I'm going to be safe with it. We'll just do it for a moment, or you could just watch me. But what we do is we get comfy and we close our eyes. And it can help to put hands on your chest. And then we just slow down our breathing. See, again, as soon as I do this, my nervous system starts to calm down, probably because I've done it a lot. Even just this, even just closing your eyes, connecting with yourself, you might notice a shift, because what you're doing is you're getting out of your brain and you're sort of noticing the stress you're carrying in your body. And what we do is, without judgment, without analyzing, we just notice what's happening physically in our body. Maybe you feel tension in your chest. Maybe you feel a sinking feeling in your stomach. Maybe your legs feel restless and agitated. You're just going to notice and observe. You're not going to try and make sense of it. You're not going to try and analyze it. You don't need to figure out why. You're just connecting. And as you notice it, imagine you're breathing into that tension. So for example, if it's in your chest, you're just breathing and noticing that tension, breathing into it and let it be. And what you might find happen is one of two things. That tension might move and go somewhere else in your body, or it might dissipate. Sometimes just slowing down and noticing allows it to dissipate, because what's happening is it's a stress response. It's the manifestation of the alarm in your body, and it's trying to tell you something. And we're so busy in life that we don't listen. And so it stays activated because it's saying something's wrong. You need to pay attention to me. And by doing this, we're paying attention. We're giving it a voice. And so sometimes that's enough. Sometimes giving it a voice is enough, and it dissipates and tension leaves. And sometimes how it has a voice is it moves, and you might notice it kind of crawls up. Maybe it goes into your jaw. You might feel it a little in your face. And I hear so often people will experience tears. They don't even know why. The tears come. And that's because your body was holding stress and your tears are releasing it. If you were to put those tears under a microscope, they would have cortisol in them. They're literally flushing a stress hormone out of your body, cortisol, which we have when we're in an activated stress for too long. So I do this for about 3 to 5 minutes with people, where they just notice what's happening in their body. They breathe into it and they give it space. They don't judge it. They don't analyze it. They just notice. And if they feel an emotion, they let it be. And that's it. It's literally just listening to your body, giving it space, giving it a voice, and connecting with any emotion that comes. If you do this and you feel anxious, that's just the stress you're feeling. You can contain, don't push yourself too hard. You can contain afterwards. If you really struggle, I would recommend meeting with a therapist, and they can coach you through this, and they could help you ground in a session. But generally speaking, as long as you don't struggle with day-to-day, everyday, really serious trauma, this should be a helpful way to boost mood. And I hope that exercise made sense. If you've got questions, certainly at the end you can ask. Sometimes to improve mood, we have to do the thing that's stressing us out. And I'll give you a perfect example. I have to do my own accounting with my own business. And I love math, but I just don't have time to do the accounting. So for all year, my accounting has been on my mind. And if you know tax season, like we came to the end of a tax season, I really have to do my accounting. And it was stressing me out because I hadn't done it. The day I took the first step, I did the hard thing, I started it, I felt so much better. I had dopamine because I accomplished something. I released some cortisol because I did the thing that was stressing me out, but the cortisol was there to get me ready for. I had an output by actually doing the task, and it wasn't stressing me out anymore because I did the thing. Sometimes it might mean saying no to something that's too much in your life. Maybe it's weighing on you and you're thinking about it all the time. This is the opportunity to maybe say no. Maybe it's about setting boundaries with families and friends. Hard to do. It is the hard thing. I'm not going to lie, but it can pay off in dividends if that is what's stressing you out. Maybe it means starting that project, that assignment for school or for your job, or doing your taxes. Maybe it's about organizing your budget. Maybe it's about getting your finances in order or doing that chore. But do the thing that's stressing you out as long as you're safe to do it. Another way to improve mood is to get creative. So when we have trauma or stress, our brain actually becomes inflexible. It's a trauma effect that we experience. And the best way to unlock this, to increase the flexibility of our brain, is to be creative, which I think is amazing. I don't know, my God is a creator. I made in his image. So it's very beautiful to be creative. It's very healing to be creative. This is why things like art therapy work. It actually is healing the brain to access that part of our brain. You could doodle, you could paint, sculpt, build. Maybe it's about being creative in business and starting an Etsy shop online and making printable downloads. Like maybe that's how you're creative. Maybe you're a social media creative person and you could do TikToks and social media posts and YouTube videos. Maybe you're a thrifter and like projects and want to buy something at a thrift store and flip it and give it a new life. Creativity can mean different things for different people, but there are a lot of ways we can be creative. So maybe get creative with creativity, and that might be a way to boost mood. I want to give you another technique, and it sounds fancy. It's called bilateral stimulation. So this is a way to actually heal from trauma, but it also helps with everyday stress. And what we do is we take our hands and we make a butterfly and then put them on your chest so that your fingers are at your collarbone. And what we do, and normally your eyes would be closed. I'm going to keep mine open this time. What you would do with your eyes closed and slowing down your breathing like before, you're going to tap right, then left, right, then left. And you're going to do it rhythmically, not fast, not too slow, but pretty steady. And if my eyes were closed and if I was doing this, I might feel like my brain's itchy, or I might feel a weird sensation on the top of my head, because what's happening is you're connecting your right and your left hemisphere of your brain as you do this simple exercise. And when we go through stress, when we go through trauma, our brain compartmentalizes, it kind of detaches a little bit. And this is how we heal it. We can literally do some neuroplasticity in our own home, in a chair, in a lazy boy, by doing this butterfly bilateral hug. And just right, then left, right, then left. You could do this for 2 to 3 minutes. You could do it when you're feeling stressed. You can do it when you're not feeling stressed. And it heals your brain. Some people feel an emotion come to the surface when they do this. It's similar to the somatic exercise, and that's okay. Feel the emotion. Let it come over you like a wave and then pass over you. Emotions are less intense when we feel them than when we try to suppress them. When we suppress, we add fuel to the fire. When we feel them, we don't get caught up in the current. The wave just crashes over us. So I hope this one is helpful. It's a bit of a unique one, but a lot of people I work with have found it very helpful. And if you want to learn more about that, you can always Google bilateral stimulation. There's a lot of research on it. If you're someone like me who needs to understand, why does something work? And Wayne is going to share this PowerPoint, and it's also going to be available in video if you want to go back to it with the instructions. Another way to boost mood is to be kind. Again, it's hormonally, this is activating those healthy hormones in our brain when we feel good when we help someone else. We also talk about it in cognitive behavioral therapy because sometimes it can be really healthy to kind of get out of our own mind for a little bit Our needs still matter. Our thoughts and emotions absolutely matter. And sometimes we just need to get out of them to give ourselves a bit of respite, a bit of a break. And we can do that by focusing on someone else's needs temporarily. Maybe it's being kind to a stranger. Maybe it's paying for somebody's Tim Hortons in the lineup. Maybe it's phoning or texting a friend. Maybe giving someone the encouragement you need, because maybe you might benefit from that. I don't know. Sometimes when I encourage people, I feel really good about it. It's, if anything, with counseling and being a therapist, that's my reward. When I help people feel good, I feel good, and that might sound selfish, but it's also a healthy reward mechanism. And you can do that for yourself. Volunteering, you could donate your time, your talent, or your treasure. Finding ways to be kind. Also included in this is self-kindness, because sometimes some of you, I can imagine, you do all this and you do it to a fault where you will do it for someone else, but you won't do it for yourself. And so if that's you, maybe your mood booster is directing it back towards yourself, being kind towards yourself, encouraging yourself, affirming yourself. Take photos. We used to have an activity where I worked, when I worked at a mental health agency, called Photo Voice. And what people would do is they would go around town, they would take pictures that described their mood. And they would take the picture, they would print it, and then they would write a description of why it was meaningful for them. And it was very therapeutic. It's a form of creativity and art therapy, and it can be very cathartic. So you could do a scavenger hunt. You could do something like Photo Voice and express your mood with photos. You could make it a game and look for abstract pictures in everyday life. Maybe it's a leaf on a tree, or maybe it's the way the concrete has a crack in it in the sidewalk. Maybe it's taking silly selfies with friends. But taking photos can be very therapeutic and can be a way to boost mood. It can also get you active. Maybe you're moving around to take the photos, and it can feel like an accomplishment, and that's dopamine. So you see, as you can imagine, we're hacking hormones, we're getting active, we're being creative. This is kind of hitting a number of things to improve mood, even though it's so simple. It's so simple. Mindful tea is an exercise that actually was really pivotal in my own wellness journey. And I've heard from people that it actually has been profound in their wellness journeys. And it's, again, really simple. I'm a broken record. It's very simple. So mindful tea is an activity to practice mindfulness, to practice rest. And when we use our senses, we ground ourselves and engage ourselves in the present moment, and it can regulate our nervous system. So what you do is you take a cup of tea. It could be coffee if you want, but hold it in both hands. And what you're going to do is feel its warmth. You're going to notice it. You're going to notice its scent. How does it smell? You're going to drink it slowly and meaningfully with small sips. You're going to take your time to taste it. How does it taste? How does it feel as it enters your mouth? How does it feel as you feel it going down your throat? I had a season in my life when I burned out. That's probably partly why I specialize in burnout. I've lived it. And honestly, the moment that I got off the burnout wagon, and I didn't even know mindful tea was a thing, is I sat at my table and I had a cup of tea and a cookie. And there was so much chaos in my life, personally and professionally. That was the first moment I had slowed down in probably a few years. And I just drank my tea and I ate my cookie. And I can't tell you why, but it was such a shift. It was such a shift. And it's suddenly sending the message to my brain that I mattered and that it's okay to take time and slow down. And it grounded me. And so I know this works firsthand. So this might be something, if you like tea or coffee, that maybe this is a tip for you to use to improve your mood. Have a mindful tea. You can have mindful other things too. You can eat an orange mindfully because they have quite a beautiful scent. You can eat an apple mindfully. You can eat a raisin mindfully. Mindful tea is nice because it's warm, but you can really do anything. Walk yourself into a good mood. Studies have shown that just a 10-minute walk can immediately boost brain chemistry and increase happiness. And if you have been on social media, there's actually a joke going around where people say they're going to take their stupid mental health walk for their stupid mental health. Like, it's been a bit of a joke, but it's true. People know, even if they begrudgingly do this, if I'm going to go on that walk, I'm actually going to feel better. Simple, but profound, because we're releasing dopamine, we're releasing endorphins in our brain, we're getting serotonin because we've gone outside and maybe got a bit of sunshine and fresh air. It's hitting all those hormones, but it's also moving our blood and our water in our body. So our body is about 65% water, give or take. And if you see a pond that isn't moving and is stagnant, what happens to that pond? It gets murky, it gets muddy, it gets yucky. Our bodies, when we don't move, get similar. They get murky, they get muddy, they get yucky. So as long as you are able to be mobile, intentionally walking moves that all around and can improve mental health. It's a natural antidepressant, a natural anti-anxiety. And another way to boost mood is to get a good night's sleep. And this can be hard for a lot of people. A lot of people don't get good sleep, but sleep is so foundational to our happiness, because even somebody with optimal mental health could have that mental health deteriorate simply from not sleeping well. If you've ever been a new parent, you might have noticed that happen, or a season with a lot of stress and you're not sleeping well, or maybe you're on a new medication and it's affecting your sleep. Maybe you work shift work and that affects your sleep. So setting a goal to improve sleep can help boost your mood. I've got some sleep hygiene strategies on here. Maybe some might be helpful for you. One, people don't realize that can really help is a bit of exercise before bed, because sometimes we don't sleep well because we have too much adrenaline and cortisol in our body. You know, if you have a job where you sit at a desk all day and you're under a lot of stress and it's go, 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 even though you're not moving, you're very sedentary. And so all that cortisol and adrenaline has no outlet, and cortisol will keep you up at night because it's saying you're awake, you need to be alert, you need to focus. So you can release that with a little bit of exercise, 5 minutes of aerobic exercise before bed. Yes, exercise releases adrenaline, but it also will get rid of it will output the excess. So you will be more restful if you do that. Turning off screens before bed, hard to do. I know I'll scroll on my phone till bed sometimes, but those screens stimulate our brains and they keep us alert, and it messes up with our circadian rhythm, our sleep cycle. So if you can, turn off the screens about an hour before bedtime, read a book instead, because it's more relaxing for our brain and for our eyes. Try to avoid caffeine after noon. Even if you say you can sleep after drinking coffee, you are not entering the REM stage of sleep when you've got caffeine in your system, which is the restorative state of sleep, the part where we rejuvenate, regenerate, so that we actually feel rested when we wake up. So the half-life of caffeine is 12 hours. So if you don't drink after 12, you should be able to sleep by midnight. That's the idea of how it works. Create a restful environment. A lot of us are working from home. If you're working in your bedroom, it's going to be hard to associate that room with rest because you're going to associate it with work. So making your room restful can help. Stick to a sleep schedule if you can. I know life doesn't always allow that, but if you can be consistent, it can help you have a better night's sleep. Try not to go to bed hungry or stuffed. If you just eat a big meal and go to sleep, you might feel tired, but your body, you've just set your metabolism in motion, so it's actually not going to rest very well. And while I can't prescribe you to take anything, magnesium is known to help with sleep. So that's something that can help people. If you have any concerns about taking it, speak to a medical professional. And then another strategy is to find a new hobby. So a new hobby might be, cross stitching or sewing or crocheting, or maybe it's learning how to paint, or maybe you want to do some Sudoku or crosswords. Maybe your new hobby involves some kind of activity or sport. Finding something new and exciting, again, is engaging that creativity part of our brain. Again, it's about accomplishment, reward, and meaningful daytime activities. We all need to have things that we enjoy that are just for us. Not everything has to be productive. Not everything has to have a purpose other than self-care, because it's sending those micro moments of, oh yeah, I matter. Like what I'm interested in matters. I deserve a hobby. I deserve some me time. Unconsciously, that's sending good news to your body, and that's going to improve your mood. And I've got some other examples in there, like graphic design. Not everybody's a sewer or a knitter. Maybe you want to do graphic design. That's still a new hobby. Music, learn a language, lots of options. Find community. And I just have a few more slides here. I am mindful of time, but I do have a few more to get through. So finding a community. I mentioned earlier, we heal in community. We're actually meant to need each other. We co-regulate, we can feel love from other people, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. We're not meant to be isolated. And we've had 2 years where we've had to be isolated to try and stay safe. So finding creative ways to connect is important. I love that Wayne is setting this up for people to learn together. That's a form of connection, but so are one-on-one Bible studies or small groups. or maybe having a virtual tea date, or, I met with a friend the other day, we brought our coffees and we sat in a car together for a while and talked. Whatever you have to do to connect with people. Maybe it's similar interest groups, maybe it's volunteering. There are also apps. So this is, I started as a social worker 16 years ago, and in a small town where people were so lonely and there was no way to meet people because there wasn't like bars or like clubs or activities, or there wasn't like the places where you organically meet people. And so people really suffered. They really didn't know how to meet new people. But now, these years later, we have apps where you can meet people with similar interests. Like Peanut, I think, is for like parents of young children that can meet other parents of young children, and you set up play dates. Or Meetup is another app where you can meet people with similar interests. So you could say, like, I like reading, Lord of the Ring books, and I love coffee, and I also like Pokemon Go. You can find people with similar interests in your community and find community. So those are lots of different strategies, and I want to propose that it can be helpful to pick a couple that might work in your day-to-day life. It can also be helpful possibly to have a bit of a go-to 1 hour strategy, if that's feasible for you. So for example, let's say you're having a rough day. If you have a pre-planned go-to strategy, that can be something you can rely on to help improve your mood. So an example might be putting your phone on Do Not Disturb and put on your favorite tunes or worship music. Maybe you do that for 10 minutes. Maybe you then move your body for 15 minutes. Then maybe you're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes writing down some things you're grateful for, or maybe you're going to think and plan future goals. Remember dopamine here. We're going to access those hormones. Maybe part of your mood booster is visualizing a safe place or a fun vacation destination, or doing something creative. Again, getting those juices flowing of imagination and creativity and joy. Maybe part of your mood booster is spending, 15 to 20 minutes outside or by a window. It's I think it was like minus 30 where I am today. So I might not have been able to go outside, but I do work beside a window and I'm still benefiting from that sunshine. So this is sort of a 1 hour bubble that encapsulates a lot of what I've been talking about tonight. And you can sort of pick what your 1 hour looks like, completely modify what I've suggested here, but find something that can be your go-to strategy when you're having a rough day. Maybe it's a half-hour mood booster, whatever's feasible for you. Maybe yours is, a 5-minute mindful tea. Maybe it's a 5-minute self-hug to release some oxytocin. And then maybe it's dancing around to music for the last 5 minutes. Maybe that's feasible for you. But I just wanted to put this as an idea to inspire ways that you can improve your mood during a very difficult season. And another way, the final way to improve your mood is to do a self-check-in. Because when we're struggling, we have an unmet need. So one of the simplest things you can do is identify how you're feeling. Maybe I'm feeling sad. Maybe I'm feeling overworked. Maybe I'm feeling lonely. Taking a moment to identify. That alone is a step because you're validating, you're noticing. That starts to express some of that negative emotion. Then ask yourself what you need. All right, I'm feeling lonely. What do I need? I need a friend. I need connection. I need time with God. Maybe I need a good nap. Ask yourself what you need. Then take a step to address that need. Maybe it's phone a friend. Maybe it's pray. Maybe it's having that nap. Maybe it's eating something. Those Snickers commercials, you're not yourself when you're hungry. That's probably true for most of us. And that could be an unmet need. It could be simple. It could be physical. It could be spiritual. It could be emotional. But when you're having a rough day, I want to encourage you to ask yourself, what am I feeling? Like what do I need? What am I feeling? What do I need? And what step can I take to address that need? So that is the presentation. I want to thank you each for coming and for listening to my copious strategies. And hopefully there's at least 2, maybe even 3 that might be helpful for you. If you are looking for more resources, I have videos on YouTube, and I know Wayne has other videos on the church YouTube profile of things that I've taught. I have an Instagram page. Please feel free to follow along and connect through social media. And if you're looking for therapy, I'm personally full at this time, but I do have people that I can recommend. because sometimes we're going through things, we just need to talk. We just need to talk and have support that's neutral and objective and caring. So I also encourage that, because that can also be a way to improve mood. So thank you, everybody.